eighth wonder of the world, basically a geek show. And here are your hosts, Mike and Jack.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 40 of Basically a Geek Show. And, I was actually thinking about this. For our 10th episode, we actually basically reviewed WrestleMania 30. And now that 40's come along, it just so happened to line up with another big annual event. But we will get to that in due time. There's just a few quick news items I want to blow through, but until we get to the BlizzCon stuff.
So, annual event. So what, you got laid?
Oh, not nearly as exciting. But let's start off with some quick news items. There's an extended Marvel Avengers Age of Ultron trailer. It's listed as the UK international trailer. Most of the trailer is pretty much that trailer that we talked about in episode 38. The difference is the first 30 seconds or so. Jack, I don't know if you remember from the how much you remember from the Age of Ultron trailer, but that scene. It's a brief scene, but it's all the Avengers sitting around in a Stark Tower, and then Ultron comes in doing his whole "you're all puppets" thing.
Yeah.
Well, this basically shows the 30 seconds before Ultron shows up, and all the Avengers are basically sitting around Tony Stark's coffee table, and they're basically just all bullshitting. And the premise is that only Thor can lift his hammer. Only Thor can lift Thor's hammer. And so Tony's like, well, I don't believe in mysticism, so there's a scientific reason for why only you can lift your hammer. And Thor puts it on the table, and he's like, okay, if you can figure it out, try to lift it. And then it shows all the Avengers trying to lift it. Like, the funniest scene is, like, first Tony gets up, and he tries picking it up, and it doesn't work. And then, so the next scene, it cuts to Tony, and he's put on the Iron Man glove.
Yeah.
And he's trying to lift it, and he's got, like, rocket boosters.
Yeah.
He's not lifting it. Next scene, him and James Rhodes, a War Machine / Iron Patriot. They've both got their gloves on. And Tony's like, are you helping or not? And he's like, hey, I'm just here to represent.
Lol.
And then finally, it cuts a few more Avengers try, and then Tony's like, well, maybe it's got to do with Thor's fingerprints are encoded into the hammer. And Thor just goes, well, maybe. And then he picks up the hammer and he flips it and he catches it and he goes, or maybe you're all just not worthy. And then Ultron shows up and then it cuts into the trailer that we've all seen. It's just notable because it gives us around 30 seconds or so of just the Avengers bullshitting and kind of being casual. And that's always been the strength of Whedon's writing, in my opinion, has been casual dialogue.
Yeah.
So I thought that was it was neat to see. And I agree with people who said that if the whole movie's like that, it's probably going to be awesome. Probably won't be, but a brief little glimpse into kind of the Avengers just laid back, which I thought was cool.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'll admit, I haven't watched it. Like I said on one of the previous shows, I feel like I've already seen this fucking movie.
Well, you saw Battlestar Galactica, right?
Yeah.
You pretty much know Ultron's motive there, so.
Right, exactly. Sentient robot wants to annihilate mankind because reasons, singularity, blah, 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 blah.
Strings! Yeah, and Pinocchio references.
You and I said before we started recording, you're like, hey, you want to watch a trailer? I'm just like, not really, because I feel like we've beaten this into the ground already so much.
Well, the reason why I thought bringing this up is because this little piece of the trailer actually had nothing to do with Ultron's whining, to say.
I get it. No, I do get it, and I don't blame you for it at all. It's just like one of those things where just for me personally, I'm kind of burnt out on this fucking movie before it's, and I was feeling the same way about Age of Extinction as well. And it really kind of minimized my enjoyment of the movie, where I
liked it. I
liked it, yeah. And it definitely wasn't it's definitely not the weakest installment in the Transformers series. Whereas of the two Avengers movies, I think it's a given that this one is most likely going to be the weaker of the two so far.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know. Again, I feel like I've seen it already. I already feel kind of burned out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it may be a combination of us discussing it on the show so frequently, but I think more it's the point of just the villain and the overarching plot as we know it
Mm-hmm.
is just such a beaten in the ground trope at this point that
Yeah.
I don't feel anything compelling me to take an interest in this beyond a passing one. Now, if I happen to sit and watch it and I'm like, oh my god, I have a love boner for this movie and splooge, then fucking awesome, you know. But as it stands right now, I'm just like, meh, whatever.
It's one of those things. I've said it before, but Ultron has never really been my favorite Marvel villain. I kind of get why they're doing it in that, I have the feeling that the Avengers is gonna follow the same basic formula that Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, followed. So in Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, you had Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, the first and third movies, which tied together with, Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows. And it was the middle one, The Dark Knight, the second movie, which had the whole Joker plot, which really didn't have anything to do with Ra's al Ghul or the League of Shadows. And its only relevance was Harvey Dent's subplot, which really wasn't the focus of the film. And that was picked up as a minor plot thread in, The Dark Knight Rises. But for the most part, you know, that movie followed the formula of 1 and 3 are a continuous story, and 2 is an unrelated event that happens in between. And I get the feeling that Avengers is gonna follow that, with Avengers, 1 obviously had Loki, but it had his alien mercenary army that he got from Thanos. Avengers 3 and 3.2, I guess, the Infinity Wars, that film, or those two films, which are going to serve as one story, are going to be connected because obviously Thanos is involved in both Avengers 1 and then the Infinity Wars story, and Age of Ultron is just sort of the story in the middle that has really nothing to do with anything Thanos related, but they just needed an Avengers story to kind of go in between, and Age of Ultron is one of the more notable Avengers events, so to say, one of their big comic book series, so I guess they chose it. Obviously they did, but yeah, I don't know, I like the trailer. Like I said, Wheaton's strength has always been in laid-back conversational dialogue. His problem, in my opinion, is that he really doesn't know when to change that up, and that his writing tends to stay that way for dialogue scenes that call for more perhaps formal or serious dialogue, and then that's where things get a bit shaky.
See,
but when it comes,
I can relate to that though, because when I'm writing, I'm kind of like that too. I can do really good with just witty, snarky dialogue that's of a more kind of. I'm not comparing myself to Joss Whedon. But I'm just saying, like, in that sense, I can kind of get it, because if that's where your strength is, and it probably is his strength because he enjoys doing it. I would imagine maybe, you know, off camera, that's kind of probably the way he is, and so writing it comes very natural. And that tendency to kind of bleed it over into serious business kind of things is very tempting. And then there's also the mindset that I kind of have, where even in a very, you know, there have been literal life and death situations where I've been in, where I've made very dry, sarcastic jokes in the middle of them that a lot of people around me thought were just incredibly inappropriate. And there was never any offense meant. It was just me being me, I guess. Maybe I'm just an emotionally stunted, sad, bitter man, but, you know, there it is for what it's worth, and that might be part of it. For me, some may take that as a fault of his. I don't, because I kind of get it. I think it makes the movies that he writes, the movies and things that he writes, a lot more palatable for me, at least, in that regard, because it's kind of in tune to how my mind works to a degree.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's whatever. Maybe, you know, if they have, It's pretty sad when I'm saying I'd rather see the Avengers sing around bullshitting in a shawarma shop than the actual plot of the movie. But if they have, half an hour or so of that, I'm not going to complain.
Mm-hmm.
So, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Though, speaking of things I really can't be arsed to give a shit about, Star Wars Episode VII.
Yeah, not much news here. They just released the title, and it's going to be Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. I don't really like this title at all. Two reasons. The first is that it doesn't really seem epic enough. Let's take a look at Star Wars titles. There's A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace. Even the Attack of the Clones had a sort of grandioseness to it. But The Force Awakens just kind of seems dull. And truth be told,
When did the Force ever go to sleep?
Exactly. This is the 7th film in this film series. The Force has been awake for 6 fucking movies.
I mean, unless it's like some kind of plot point where it's like, like one of those fucking tripe-ass Christmas movies, which, by the way, Grumpy Cat,
Yeah.
and this is something we'll go off the reservation a little bit for a moment. Grumpy Cat is getting a movie on fucking Lifetime, a Christmas movie.
Not only is Grumpy Cat getting a Christmas movie on Lifetime, Grumpy Cat is also hosting next week's episode of Monday Night Raw. Because when Vince McMahon sees declining ratings, declining pay-per-view buys, and declining network subscriptions,
he puts his nose face first into a bucket of cocaine.
Obviously, the solution is to get a fucking cat to host the flagship weekly television show. That will fix everything.
Well, I mean, okay, if the ratings are going down to a certain point, what are you out to have a cat host your fucking show? I mean, what could I mean, they're already hemorrhaging money out of orifices he didn't even know the company had. So, okay, so you want to have a cat shit in the middle of your ring on Christina's foot while he's fucking screaming at somebody. Or, Christina, what, is that his name? No.
What, John Cena?
John Cena. God damn it, where's my brain today? Christina, I don't know. But yeah, John Cena, have a cat shit on John Cena's foot while he's screaming at someone. I'm not seeing a bad thing here. I feel sorry for the poor fucking cat, though. I mean,
I hope at one point the cat, like, anyone who has a cat knows the futility in trying to get a cat to do anything.
Right. I mean, okay. Yeah, and me and Mike and I, we're not bitter because we're both cat owners and our cats aren't hosting, cable TV shows, though my cat is visibly vexed by this. But it's not a question of that. It's like we know, and anyone out there who's listening to this who has a fucking cat, you know what we're talking about. They don't do shit, and it's not, people say cats are untrainable because they're stupid and they don't care. No, they do care. They're most definitely not stupid, and that's why they don't care. Because they're smart. They are too smart to care. And then you have the other thing, though. If you taking a cat into the middle of a fucking stadium, and I'm guessing this is what they're going, I don't know what the fuck they're going to do, but it just seems like to me it's much the same thing as if you took someone who's agoraphobic and fucking dropped them into the middle of Black Friday.
Yeah.
This is not going to end well I feel bad for the poor cat most of all. But anyways, Star Wars Episode VII. What the fuck were we talking about? Oh yeah, the Force Awakens. So yeah, unless it's going to be some kind of a plot point, one of those kind of worn out tropes of, oh my God, where's Santa? We're not going to have a Christmas, and maybe the Force has disappeared and they have to find the Force so that they can have Forcemas.
No, we already know what the Star Wars equivalent of Christmas is. It's Life Day, if the Star Wars Christmas special is to be believed.
That just sounds like something where abortion clinics get blown up to me. I mean, if that's when you hear me, when someone says Life Day, I either think A, that, B, some kind of like weird event that celebrities have ribbons around their wrists for that we're supposed to give shits about because celebrities. I don't know. It is okay. The name's not the best. I don't know.
I just love it because it comes from the Christmas special with B. Arthur. The Christmas special, by the way, that George Lucas has vowed to destroy every copy of because he's personally ashamed of it. Which should tell you how fucking bad it is if Jar Jar Binks got the okay, but this is the work he's personally ashamed of.
And I don't think necessarily it's because that it's that bad by comparison to Jar Jar Binks. I think it's George Lucas progressively gave fewer fucks. I mean, the George Lucas of 1980, what was it, 1980? No, it was like 1979, wasn't it? Or something?
Yeah, it was it was made between, episode 4 and episode 5. So in between the first two movies as a way to kind of keep it in the public consciousness as they were making Empire.
Yeah. I mean, you can the funny thing is, I've watched that special. I mean, you can still find it on YouTube. At least you can as of a couple of years ago.
You can still find black market tapes of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that's like, all right, this is what you're ashamed of. I think it's just what I said. Progressively over the years, fewer fucks are given by that man. And though I don't give a single flying fuck about Episode 7, I really don't. It's another one of those things. It's so far off in the future that
it's actually next year.
It's so far off in the future that I find myself not being able to give many fucks. I don't know. I think it's going to, the one thing that does make me kind of give a shit is that George Lucas isn't at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that this intervention took place. Not as necessarily someone who cares about Star Wars, but as someone who cares about things that don't suck.
Mm-hmm.
It's good that someone finally stepped in like, nah, man, go home, George. You're drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Indeed.
There's that.
Indeed. But now let's move on to the big news. BlizzCon 2014 has come and gone.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna start off with their documentary that they made called "Looking for Group," and this is a documentary to celebrate 20 years of the Warcraft franchise and 10 years of the World of Warcraft game. And this was sort of their big thing for to celebrate that milestone at this BlizzCon. We'll get into more about why maybe that confused some people later on, but let's focus on the documentary as of now. It's mostly just a Warcraft retrospective.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it consists of. It's an hour and 1 minute long documentary about the history of Warcraft, the World of Warcraft, and there's if you care enough about these games and these universes to have already taken time on your own to read the lore and the kind of like behind the scenes snippets of what went behind these games, you're not going to find enough new there to really keep you enthralled with it. And if you don't give enough of a shit to have done those things, you're probably not going to find anything here to make you give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, one of those things. There was one thing that I found kind of surprising.
Okay.
And that was, they had like this brief thing where they're kind of just, the format is kind of an interview format, heavily edited, and to the point to where like someone will be in the middle of a sentence and they'll just like, you're cut off, next guy. And they're talking to people about the class that they play and why. And Chris Metzen comes on and he says that he plays a human paladin. And I don't know how I feel about that.
You mean like, see that surprised me on two levels. One, we know that he's all about Thrall and the orcs.
Right.
And two, he's gone on record saying his favorite human not human, but his favorite Alliance character is Malfurion, who is a Night Elf druid.
Right.
So, Chris Metzen as a human paladin, and I believe he's also said that not only does he play human paladin, but he's been playing human paladin characters and RPGs since, like, he was a kid playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, he said he's always played a human paladin, like, always. And in that respect, the same thing could be said for me. That's kind of always been my shtick, too. And to find myself having such a strong common thread with Chris Metzen is frankly disturbing.
Do you secretly lust for Thrall, sir?
You know, I don't talk about what you do in the privacy of your own home. Oh, jeez. Jesus. I have a lot of soul searching to do now. I really do.
See, I just don't know how to think about, I just don't know how to process this. It's like, Chris Metzen, okay, well, part of me isn't surprised, and I'll tell you why. If you go to Light's Hope Cathedral, which is the big paladin organization in the Warcraft universe is the Argent Crusade.
Yeah.
And if you go to Light's Hope Chapel, one of the Argent Crusade's main bastions, fortifications in the game, there is a paladin there's a paladin NPC character named Dispatch Commander Metz, and he looks like Chris Metzen. Like, if you were to try to make a toon in Warcraft that looks like Chris Metzen using the customization options, this would be it. Huh. So there has always been sort of he did put himself in the game as a paladin, as an NPC.
Which, I mean, that's interesting. And, you know, some people, I know that you were telling me before we started recording, you know, some people said that this kind of doesn't completely, but kind of goes in the pile to possibly debunk a bit of the thing. And the thing that you and I have in our passionate rants on the show over the months have kind of strayed into a little bit. This notion that Blizzard has a bit of a horde bias to them. And I'll freely admit that, you know, sometimes you and I let our own butt hurt flow through us a little bit strongly.
More on that coming up, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got a lot of that. But, you know, so maybe sometimes you and I do go a little bit far in our accusatory tones regarding Blizzard and horde bias, but we do it because...
Okay.
What?
I just want to say, to explain horde bias. My whole thing on horde bias has not been, I have never really believed that, you know, the Blizzard team is sitting around cackling going, we're gonna make the horde awesome and the Alliance suck. That's never really...
I don't think it's that either.
That's not what I mean when I say horde bias. When I say horde bias, I say that there's no intent to make one faction better than the other, or give one faction more time than the other. It's the belief, though, that when you get right down to it, as a collective, Blizzard's writing team, their lore team, they personally find the Horde story to be more intriguing, so that gets the lion's share of attention.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It's not, they don't go out of their way to do it, that's just what they spend more of their time on, and then, oh shit, you know, we gotta get this game out, we need to cut a bunch of ideas for time, and because they've already spent so much time on the Horde stuff, it's the Alliance stuff that gets cut, like pretty much the entire Alliance plot of Cataclysm.
Right, exactly, and that's pretty much my take on it too. It's just from a lore standpoint, you know, and there are things to counter this. I mean, they can argue, the big argument on Blizzard's end has been, well, you know, Jaina's character arc, which Jaina is the Alliance thrall more or less in some ways, except less prevalent. You know, you had Jaina's character arc, and they say that they claim that they've done interesting things with Anduin. I would like to know where these things are.
Anduin is truly WoW's Wesley Crusher, in that he's a young, he's a teenage male who everyone says is special, who everyone agrees is always right. The writers seem to love the character, but everyone else just loathes him.
Right. And Anduin, I don't really know who I hate more, Anduin or Thrall, when you get right down to it, because Thrall...
I'm gonna say Thrall, because Thrall butts his nose into more crap.
Right, but then again, though, we don't have the possibility of, any expansion now. They can say, hey, we're going to kill off Varian Wren. Guess who your new king is?
Well, that's going to happen. Metzen has said he wants Anduin to be king at some point.
Yeah, and...
Well, okay, my only hope is, okay, Anduin's class is he's a priest, right?
Right.
My only hope is that as part of the storyline that leads to him becoming king, he gets a serious life lesson in getting his ass kicked, and he, basically grows a fucking backbone, trains hard, and he basically becomes a paladin, a warrior priest, and then, Anduin as king, if he's a paladin and sort of had this whole, righteous awakening where he realized that he can't pussyfoot around with the Horde anymore, that I could deal with Anduin as king then.
That
but
should be the name of a paladin self-res ability.
What?
Righteous Awakening.
That should be.
It really should be. Blizzard, get the fuck on it.
It should be. You could, either that or something like Avenging Wrath. But, that's really so Anduin in his current form as king, fuck no. But, there is a way to make Anduin as king, palatable. I just am not sure if they're actually going to do it.
I don't think they will. I think they like the path that Anduin's on. I think they're going to continue to do it. They find something appealing by it, I think. As far as I can gather, the alliance, the Garrosh War, basically, was supposed to be that for Anduin. It was where he was supposed to have learned, gotten a little bit over some of his hippie tendencies, and
he didn't though.
Right, he didn't. But according to Blizzard, I think that's what they think happened, because he kind of seen by the way King Wren acted that you can use force to save people and not go overboard. And Jaina kind of took over the role that King Wren used to have of being the kill them all the fuck now.
The warmongering psychopath.
Right. And personally, I liked King Wren better as a warmongering psychopath. But
well,
he had some peyote with getting Greymane in the woods, and he came out chill.
But I liked the when you and I did Siege of Orgrimmar and got Garrosh down, during that ending cinematic where Jaina's like, now's your chance, Varian. Dismantle the Horde. And I'm like, can we vote on this? Cause I'm in Plan Crazy Bitch.
Yeah.
Is this is this a vote?
Meanwhile, I'm just sitting there like, I want you. But yeah, I'm definitely on Team Crazy Bitch as far as that's concerned.
Well, the thing is, and not saying Varian wasn't justified, because if you look at Varian's history, he certainly was justified in hating the Horde, because one, as a kid, he saw the original Horde burn down his city.
Right.
And then, as an adult, he was kidnapped as King of Stormwind, and then sold into slavery as a gladiator to orcs. So the guy's got legitimate reasons to hate orcs, and to hate the Horde. But the problem is that a lot of that development didn't happen in game, so a lot of people who maybe aren't as up to the lore kind of just saw him as a warmongering psychopath. Whereas Jaina, I think, fills that role better because her reasons for hating the Horde are shown in game, so more people understand why she's pissed at the Horde.
Right, and you've seen that on the forums in the form of more people defending Jaina and saying, hey, is she a little bit over the top? Yeah, she is, but she's got some valid points. And even Blizzard has said the only reason the Horde even still exists is because
of game mechanics.
Right.
Blizzard devs have gone on record saying that they're not entirely happy how Siege of Orgrimmar ended because they couldn't think of a really good reason that the Alliance would just up and leave. And they're like, no, realistically, if this wasn't a two-faction game, Orgrimmar would be a crater.
Right.
And, so I don't know, I understand game balance, and I wasn't asking for Orgrimmar to be a creator. I just wanted to see more Alliance victories represented in game. I wanted to see the Horde out of Ashenvale. I wanted to see Dalaran as an Alliance city. I wanted to see reclaiming of Gilneas. I just wanted to see Alliance victories shown in game. I didn't necessarily want Orgrimmar to be a creator or anything.
Right. I don't either, though. Part of me kind of wishes that they would do something to it, like have part of it on fire for, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the park, which isn't getting repaired, by the way.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I get it. They only have so much time, and that's fine. But the long and short of what Mike and I are saying here is that we don't think Blizzard has an active plan to fuck the Alliance in the ass, because that's just stupid and bad business. What we're saying is that when it comes right down to it, though, in terms of in-game story, if they only have time to do one thing, that one thing more often than not is going to be for the Horde, because they find that story to be more interesting to them. And even if it's on a subconscious level, like when they write something for the Alliance, they think it's great and they think it's awesome and they think it's balancing things out, and there's this disconnect between, the writers of the game and the fan base in that regard, because what they think is balancing the scales, we don't really think is balancing the scales. And that disconnect is a big source of the problem. And you have a lot of people that say, the Alliance players are whining and so on and so forth. Of course, then again, you have a lot of people saying, we're all whining, because then you have Alliance players saying the Horde's whining, so on and so forth. When the truth is somewhere down the middle, I think everyone whines and bitches pretty much equally. But on Blizzard's end, they have legitimately seemed baffled by, Alliance players' reaction to the end of Pandaria, where we said, okay, well, where's this great moment you guys were talking about that we would be getting? They're like, duh, Siege of Orgrimmar, you stormed their capital. Well, okay, that is cool. But what did we get? Nothing. And we're not saying, like Mike's saying, we're not saying that we want Orgrimmar destroyed or the Horde ripped from the game or anything like that. What we're saying is that we would like to see more time, some of the time that's being taken to do things for the Horde storyline, some of that represented in game, because as far as the lore is concerned, the Alliance has, maybe not completely retaken Gilneas. It is technically Alliance, but it's uninhabitable. Ashenvale has been retaken. A lot of territories that were lost in Cataclysm have been retaken by the Alliance over the course of that war, but it's not reflected in game. So basically what we are saying is that we would like some of that effort, that's been spent on, the journey of Thrall, a retrospective, put into, hey, give a bitch Ashenvale.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, someone joked that, the expansion after Mists of Pandaria would be World of Warcraft Goel's spirit journey.
Right. Yeah, that was on. But wait, there's lore.
Yeah, but it was great because the host of that, Pride, a huge Alliance fanboy, he's just talking, and then someone cuts off. He's like, "Pride, this just broke. New World of Warcraft expansion, Goel's spirit journey," and he's doing the show, so he doesn't know. He's not checking MMO champions or anything, and he just hears that and he goes, "No!"
Yeah. Please tell me you were shitting me. Please, if that's true, fuck them. If that's true, fuck them. Yeah, he went off on a bit of a panic there for a second. For the other dude's like, "No, I'm just fucking with you." Oh, thank God.
It's like, no! Although we don't know how Warlords of Draenor is going to end, so it could very well end with Thrall carrying baby Thrall through the portal.
Yeah, and I think Jesse Cox really called that one when he said that, because
as angels play harps in the background.
It's so over the top, and he was obviously joking, but it's so close to home. It's such effective parody in that sense that it's one of those things that you could actually see happening when he says that, and you're like, he's joking, but he's not really joking, kind of a thing. And if that did end up being the end of Warlords of Draenor, A, it would be the most hilariously epic thing ever, and B, no one would really be that surprised.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. But speaking of like topics of Horde and Alliance buys, the Alliance finally got a song.
Yeah, they did. And kudos, to Elite Tauren Chieftains for finally, after God knows how many fucking years, doing that, whether Blizzard told them to. Well, a lot of them are Blizzard, so I don't know. Whether that order came from on high or something like that. They eventually did get around to writing a song for the Alliance, And as someone
who's not a fan of that band in general, for what it was, I thought it was a good effort.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of the members of the band are actually, they're, one of them's, I forget his name, but they're, I think Sam Didier, their lead art director, Dave Cossack, who's, or not Dave, I think Dave Cossack, is that who was on bass? I think it was.
But, Cossack is, or as I sometimes call him, Dave Kiosk, but, he's the, main quest designer. So he's basically in charge of representing in-game story.
Right. So, and that's always been kind of an argument for the Horde bias too. It's like, okay, well, this band, which is composed of a lot of Blizzard bigwigs, is obviously, a Horde biased kind of a thing, a Horde, Horde reference and so on and so forth. And that's always kind of fueled it too. So, that's been a thing. But yeah, they did have a song for the Alliance, and it was cool. Given the fact that they are, these guys are VPs and directors and everything of a major, gaming developer, major game developer, this is definitely like kind of a high quality garage band thing.
These guys are not trained musicians.
I mean, I was in a band when I was, late teens, early 20s, and it was kind of, well, they were actually better than we were, to be frank with you, but it was kind of that thing. I mean, a high quality garage band, they're still a garage band, but they happen to have a passionate and not incidentally captive audience at BlizzCon, so they perform.
Yeah. You have to listen to us now. You bought the ticket.
Yeah. You bought the ticket. Now take the ride, motherfucker. So it's one of those things, and for what it is, it's good. Yeah. But yeah, there was that. So
there was the Alliance song. But truth be told, the documentary Looking for Group, the Alliance song, there's also that was really all the World of Warcraft news really come out of BlizzCon, because back when we were predicting what BlizzCon would entail, it was interesting. It was an off year for BlizzCon, so normally it's not a BlizzCon where they announce a WoW expansion, but a few things happened. There was a mystery, slot, and there was a mystery pavilion on the BlizzCon maps that were released about a week or two prior to the event. And they've been making noise about wanting to get WoW on a 1-year developmental cycle. So, our thinking was, it's possible that they would release that they would, announce, what their next expansion after Warlords of Draenor would be. And that was one possibility. We also talked about it being a big Warcraft anniversary, that they might use it as a chance to unveil their redone Warcraft 1 and 2 games, or maybe even Warcraft 4 as an RTS game. So, we threw around a lot of ideas. We were wrong. All of them were wrong. No new WoW expansion.
Well, now, in my defense, I did go on record as saying it would either be a new WoW expansion or a new intellectual property altogether.
And
I did say that.
It was that, but we did not get a WoW expansion. We did not get a WoW expansion, nor did we get any news on the RTS future. No. So I could do it, but you're very vocal on this. So Jack, what was their big surprise for BlizzCon?
Okay, so let me kind of frame this in the context. Mm-hmm. You know, they have the opening ceremony, which is always, they always make you sit through all the shit you don't really care about to get to the shit you do care about, because reasons. And so, you know, but they start off talking about, well, you know, this is one of the most important BlizzCons we've ever had because, you know, this is WoW's 10th anniversary and it's Warcraft's 20th anniversary, and from such humble beginnings, blah, 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 yada, yada. And they masturbate with that for, you know, a good bit. And then they go into, you know, some of the other games like Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, blah, 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 blah. Which the new Hearthstone expansion was announced for those who care. Goblins versus Gnomes. Have fun with that. And, you know, they unveiled some new heroes for Heroes of the Storm. I don't remember all of them. I know Jaina and Thrall were among them that were mentioned that will be put in the game. So those who are looking forward to Heroes of the Storm, there's that for you. But they, you know, then eventually Chris Metzen comes out. And he starts talking a bit about, you know, WoW's, Warcraft's 20th and WoW's 10th anniversaries respectively. And you see him start to get visibly teary-eyed. Then that's where things start to go kind of south as far as I'm concerned. He starts saying, well, you know, it's been 17 years since we have, you know, unveiled a new intellectual property. Those weren't his exact words, but the gist of what he was saying. And I'm like, oh, fuck. You know, already I'm like, oh God, here we go. Fuck me. And it's like, well, you know, there's still hope because, you know, anniversary and blah, blah, blah. My reasoning for thinking that there would be a WoW expansion, I still maintain it wasn't me grasping at straws. It was fairly well founded. But in any event, so they go and say, he goes on to talk about, you know, all the work they put in this game and so on and so forth. And then the unveil for this trailer. Now, the name of the game is called Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
It is a first-person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not I don't think it's a first-person shooter. I think it can be played in first-person.
I think it's primarily first-person, actually. Out of all of the gameplay, out of all the actual gameplay footage that wasn't rendered footage that I saw, it seemed to be that it's going to be first-person perspective. I don't want to call it a first-person shooter, because when I think of a first-person shooter, at least a traditional first-person shooter game, I think of something that has a campaign mode.
Right. Well,
this is more like, to give anyone a frame of reference, Team Fortress 2?
Yeah, and it's Blizzard's Team Fortress 2, more or less. It's called Overwatch, and the thing is, they go into this trailer, and for those of you out there who are Blizzard fans, you will know that Blizzard has a very distinctive art style. Even amongst across, you know, universes that seemingly have nothing in common, though I maintain that they do. You know, you have your Warcraft and your StarCraft and your Diablo. Those are the big three that they've basically worked with for the last 17 years. And they all have different looks about them to an extent. But they all share certain art cues that are very recognizable as trademark Blizzard. Warcraft and StarCraft especially share a lot of the same art stylings and aesthetics. And the Protoss, for example, from StarCraft, a lot of their structures are very Draenei looking in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The Draenei almost seem like Warcraft Protoss. And though the two races themselves aesthetically don't really share all that much, but in terms of their architecture and things like that, there is a lot of common cues there that are kind of called to between the two. So you have that very distinctive Blizzard art style. Now, what they presented us with at BlizzCon was, in the words of Monty Python, now for something completely different.
No, Overwatch is the best Pixar movie that will never be made.
Right. You watch the trailer, and spoilers. It's this little kid and his big brother, and they're in this museum. Well, okay, let me back up a little bit. It starts off with a brief history. Evidently, Overwatch was this group of heroes that was founded to stop this ongoing, presumably, world war. This kind of like, Armageddon-esque worst-case scenario war that had been going on for decades, kind of a thing. And this group of heroes was founded to bring an end to that. And they evidently did, and then they kind of maybe didn't necessarily retire, but somewhat faded into obscurity because they had no war to stop anymore. They had done their job. So then you flash forward however many years in the future, and it's this little kid and his big brother, and they're in this museum, and the kid's all like, ooh, ah, about all these, pieces of memorabilia that were used by Overwatch. And then all of a sudden, these...
By the way, I just want to say that the older brother who was completely disinterested with everything, I think best represents the audience viewpoint.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, they're wandering around the museum, and this kid's like, oh my god, this one was used by so-and-so, and they're all like, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, the museum is stormed by this group of villains who are stopped by, you guessed it, the Overwatch team. Fighting ensues because action, and the day is saved, and the older brother finally gets his dream of going the fuck to Taco Bell and then getting home and smoking a joint. And if you were to just sit in a vacuum and watch this trailer, you would think it was a Pixar movie. That characteristic Blizzard art style
is completely absent.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Which is weird, because in the BlizzCon Day 2 Overwatch panel, they specifically said it's a lighter, the Overwatch has a lighter look to it than some of our other games, but it's still got that distinctive Blizzard style. And I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, and they're right on one thing. It does have a lighter look to it. It is, it does have that, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not criticizing the game for that. That's not one of my problems with the game. It's one of those things where it's like, if it's presented to you as a movie trailer, most people say, oh, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, I'd see that. And as a movie, it works. It seems okay. But when then you say, but wait, this isn't a movie, this is the new game from Blizzard. At that point, it's like, wait, what? What the fuck?
Again,
these characters are so fucking generic. They have this one character, her name is Tracer, a British chick with a shrill Cockney accent.
And anime hair.
And anime hair. And she is evidently their flagship character, pretty much by their own admission.
She is the new Thrall.
Yeah, she's the new Thrall, but she's a Thrall that we can ignore, which is cool because I don't really plan on doing that much with this game. If it ends up being free to play, I'll check it out. I'll sign up for the beta just to play around with it and what the fuck ever. I'll probably I'll do the same thing that I said about Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone and Transformers Universe. It will have 2 hours in which to impress me. but all the characters are either annoying or just flat out generic. Just really generic. You have Hanzo, who, and she said that I could quote her on the show, a friend of mine, Riley. She was going on about, this game the other day to me, and she said, you look at Hanzo, and he is so Asian stereotypy that it's borderline offensive, but more just stupid. He doesn't even really look Asian. He's supposed to be a samurai, but he's got a fucking bow.
Yeah. Granted, I'm not brushed up on my Japanese history, but I've always been under the impression that samurais were essentially the Japanese equivalent of medieval knights, in that they were armored, soldiers from the nobility.
Right.
Not exactly the bow and arrow wielding type.
Yeah. And, we discussed that for a bit, and the funny thing is like most of the people who don't like this game, who don't like the idea of this game, are all saying pretty much the same things. We're all on the same page on this as to why we don't like it. And, my friend here that I was talking about, she doesn't even have the bias that you and I have, Mike, where we're pissed off. Let's be honest, we're pissed off that we're not getting a new WoW expansion out of this.
I would have been happy with either a WoW expansion announcement, or if they had simply said, here's the redone Warcraft 1 and 2 RTS games.
Right. Some game WoW related, Warcraft related, that we could have taken away come out of this with. But she doesn't even have that. She hasn't played WoW in like 5 or 6 years, and she doesn't even give a fuck about WoW anymore. And she's pretty much like, yeah, this is stupid. So it's not just the WoW players who are pissed, it's just gamers in general who are looking at this. Now, well, the WoW players are pissed, and the others are just like, what the fuck is this shit? And all of these characters, they just look so generic. You got Winston, who's a big gorilla in armor, but he has glasses on. So just think Beast from X-Men, basically, more or less.
I mean, yeah, the whole.
You've got Reaper, who looks like the Horseman of Death from Darksiders.
Yeah, I mean, even Reaper, who perhaps has the most interesting character design, to me just kind of strikes me as generic Darth Vader sort of ripoff kind of guy, in that he's got a black cloak, black armor, kind of a skull-faced mask. I mean, this is a character design that we've seen hundreds of times before. And again, like the art style, it's not just reminiscent of Pixar, it looks like a Pixar movie. If I showed you this trailer, and I cut off the part at the beginning that said Blizzard Entertainment, and I showed you this trailer, and I said that was the trailer for the new Pixar movie, you'd believe it.
Yeah.
And I've never played Team Fortress 2 because the concept never really interested me, to be perfectly honest. So, Blizzard getting a Team Fortress 2 type game, I'm instantly completely uninterested in, because it's not a genre I'm gonna play. Chances to win me over with interesting characters doesn't look like it's going to fly, because none of these characters really strike me as memorable at all. Their flagship character, Tracer, is just annoying
as fuck.
The best way I can describe her is she tries way too hard to be quirky.
Yeah, she's cute, quirky, perky, blah, 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 blah. She's annoying.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, like, I probably won't even sign up for the beta. I just have no interest in it. If when it comes out, it's free to play, I might check it out just to say I did it, but I'm really not feeling anything that's drawing me to this. Again, if this was a Pixar movie, I'd see it, and it would probably be good. But as a game, not so much. Just not so much. And I don't know, and this also really doesn't give me anything by way of backstory. The backstory has been explained as Jack pointed out. There was a war. Overwatch was formed to stop it. They did. But now, like, the quote-unquote present of the game is Overwatch has been disbanded, more or less, and all of the Overwatch people have gone on to do their own thing. But then in this trailer, we get this Reaper guy who shows up out of nowhere and starts causing trouble, and he's after some artifact or some piece of Overwatch gear that's supposedly really powerful. So it's like, well, okay, what's his story? If the whole story is Overwatch has been inactive until this new threat has emerged, what's the new threat? What is driving the story now? What is the They developed a backstory, but I haven't seen anything in way of, the present story. If Reaper is the villain, what's his deal? What is he trying to accomplish? What are these Overwatch characters? What have they been doing since they completed their mission? It just doesn't. Nothing has really been answered.
Which brings me to my next point. We're probably not going to find too much out about that because honestly, this is exclusively a PvP game. There is no campaign mode, and which is another thing that really pisses me off about shooters these days. I get it. Most of the players who are into these games have a thing for the PvP. But there are a lot of others who would actually just like a really good, engrossing, immersive campaign mode. It is a fan of genres like Tom Clancy's and all this other thing. The hypothetical war scenario / espionage shit. I would like to see that kind of plot done well, done thoroughly in a game. I know a lot of people will be like, well, Modern Warfare 2, and that was okay. It wasn't bad, but it was so short. I don't want a campaign mode that I can sit and play through in 3 or 4 hours. Ironically, so far, one of the better ones I've seen, in terms of bang for your buck was Homefront, and just by me saying that should tell you everything you need to know, because that's about fucking North Koreans invading. But they at least gave more shits about that story. They gave more shits about their insane story than, shits are being given about the plausible stories in some of these games.
I'll tell you who's to blame for all of this. It's GoldenEye. Because GoldenEye revolutionized the first-person shooter. It brought it back into the forefront. It made it popular again. The thing about GoldenEye, of why it was so popular, was that once you beat the campaign missions, and once you unlocked all the secret levels and did all of those, there is tremendous replay value, because you could go to your friend's house, and you could just play multiplayer forever. And it was a very simple multiplayer. GoldenEye was primarily a first-person game, but what made it interesting was that it had a very simple but still highly versatile multiplayer setup. You had tons of characters to choose from, tons of weapons to choose from, tons of maps to choose from. So you were never bored playing it with your friends. And it seems that since then, all of these first-person shooters, all of these war games that sort of came out after GoldenEye has said, well, people love the multiplayer. So let's put a lot of effort into that, to the point where now games are primarily made with multiplayer in mind, and campaign mode, if it's even included, only really gets minimal development.
Yeah, and god damn it, it pisses me off because there's a lot of awesome storylines, awesome ideas that could be explored with these types of games. For the non-hardcore player like myself, and the person who, if I'm going to play an FPS, it's not because I like the genre. It's going to be because, hey, I like the concept, I like the story and the concept behind this game, and that would be my appeal to it. And so far, that kind of storyline for me has been best served by RTS games up to this point, and that's also sad because the RTS genre is all but dead. StarCraft 2 being the last man standing practically, the Red Alert series, the Command and Conquer series in general, of which Red Alert's an offshoot, has all but died, because fucking EA, GameSpy went out of business, on which the CNC multiplayer servers were hosted, and EA just really couldn't be arsed to move those over to their own servers, to native servers. So CNC is pretty much dead in that regard. There's going to be Command and Conquer Online, which is in development. I've played around a little bit in the alpha a few months ago. It was very bare bones though. It didn't run very well, and I just kind of like, meh. I'll come back to this again later, and if I can figure out how to get back to it again, I may do that now that I've got a better video card and everything. But, those types of storylines, these awesome, like hypothetical war scenarios, that I would like to see played out, that would be great for a first-person shooter, that seems to be like the domain of the RTS, and that's cool, but that genre is about dead, in spite of the overwhelming success of StarCraft 2, which is also getting its own expansion, that was announced at BlizzCon, Legacy of the Void, which is going to focus on the Protoss.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, when they brought out StarCraft 2, they said they were going to do an expansion for each of the three races. You had Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm, Wings of Liberty focusing on the Terran Confederacy, the Heart of the Swarm focusing on the Zerg, and now Legacy of the Void focusing on the Protoss. And I never really got into StarCraft 2. It's one of those games that I can see a lot of merit there. I can see where it would be fun, and I certainly don't think it's a bad game. It's just not for me. Mm-hmm. It's like a game that I know I should like, but I don't really, for whatever reason. I know, like, intellectually, I know I should love it. But when I play it, I'm just like, okay. It's cool. I mean, whatever. And I know I've gone way off on a tangent here, but, so that's my thing with the FPS games. And I wish Blizzard would have, their whole thing with this is they're kind of applying the same mindset that they did with Heroes of the Storm, right? They said with that, well, this is going to be, basically to paraphrase, this is going to be League of Legends, except approachable. And Overwatch is going to be Team Fortress 2, except approachable. And it would be kind of nice if, as part of this approachability, they would, toss a bitch a good campaign mode. But, alas, they're not going to do it. So, that's another thing about this game that kind of peeves me a bit. Which, you can just...
Well,
go on.
Well, yeah, and you were talking about this, off mic when we were talking about Overwatch. Blizzard's not innovating anymore.
Right, they're not innovating. Okay, you go back and you look at, excuse me, you go back and you look at their big three: Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft. Warcraft and StarCraft both helped put the RTS genres on the map. Now, there were others before. I'm not saying that Blizzard was the first in any of these things, but what I'm saying is that their contributions to these respective genres was so significant that it's still being emulated 20 years later. And you look at Diablo. Again, probably not the first dungeon crawler hack and slash, but the best. And again, emulated 20 years later. You have Path of Exile and Torchlight and all these other games, which in their own right are all very good games. I've played both and they're both very good. But at the same time, you've got, it's still a Diablo clone. And Diablo clone itself has become almost a genre. You can say, oh, well, it's a Diablo clone. And everyone knows exactly what you're talking about when you say that. Mm-hmm. And it's a credit to Blizzard that, as they say, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So many other things have been imitated over the last 10, 20 years. And, World of Warcraft, not the first MMO. You had Ultima Online. You had EverQuest. And, a lot of the people that started World of Warcraft were working on either Ultima Online or EverQuest, and then, moved over to Blizzard. And they said, hey, this is a good game, but we can make it better. And the funny thing is, as hardcore as vanilla is said to have been by those who were there, and I can see where it would be called quote-unquote hardcore, but it was still nothing compared to, like, EverQuest. So that was almost like the standpoint that they took with World of Warcraft. Hey, let's make the MMO genre more approachable. And as hardcore as vanilla was, it was still more approachable than the alternatives at that time. But
and now it should be noted that almost every MMO that's come out since, even those who try to differentiate themselves from WoW, still emulate WoW to a large degree. Guild Wars 2, for instance, built up a lot of, built itself up in marketing as sort of being the next evolution in MMOs. But when you get right down to it, a lot of the basic innovations in WoW that WoW brought out, Guild Wars 2 used.
Right. And
we take this for granted, but dying in WoW, dying in an MMO and then running back to your body and rezzing. You couldn't do that in EverQuest. In EverQuest, if you died, you probably lost a good chunk of your gear.
Right. I mean, you could actually go back and pick it up. I don't recall what the exact thing was. I know it was a lot more pain in the ass than the World of Warcraft method. I know it involved going back to your corpse, but I think at that point, I don't know what it was. I think you, like, by default lost such and such amount of your shit or something like that. It was a lot worse, though. I do know that without going and looking up exactly what happened. So, I mean, that was considered, what a lot of players bitch about now. We're tired of running back to our corpse. We're tired of repair bills. And, Blizzard's like, yeah, well, fuck you. It's not going anywhere. And even that is nothing compared to, what happened with, the WoW's predecessors. And World of Warcraft is, like you said, another one of these games that has been so imitated that, now 10 years after World of Warcraft, they're still trying to duplicate, other companies are trying to duplicate that success, and no one has been able to. So Blizzard has gone from this, positioning as someone who takes a genre and just revolutionizes it to the point to where once Blizzard touches a genre, no one else needs to bother. That's what they used to do. Once Blizzard touched it, everything else just became redundant. And I don't see that anymore. Like, you play Heroes of the Storm, and do I like it better than League of Legends? Yeah, I do. But that's mostly because it's Blizzard Universe characters who I'm more comfortable with and have, grew up seeing, and it's like, that certain level of comfort zone there with that. And I think that's a lot of it. So my opinion is going to be biased. From a purely gameplay mechanic standpoint, I don't see anything. I'm not going to say I don't see anything better, because it is better to me, for my purposes at least, but I don't see anything revolutionary about it.
Heroes of the Storm is not going to revolutionize the MOBA genre. MOBA genre.
Yeah.
Hearthstone is not going to revolutionize the card game genre.
No.
And
at least I don't think it is. Now, it could. It's still, a year after its release almost, and it's still going very strong. But I don't really see it doing that.
And, and Overwatch is probably not going to revolutionize, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the Team Fortress 2 genre.
Yeah, I guess the PvP, FPS genre, I don't know, but it's, okay, and like you were saying, the other night, Mike, if you have to point out at your convention why your game is not like the other guy's game.
Yeah, they did a whole thing at
you're
BlizzCon.
Starting off on the wrong foot when you have to do that.
Yeah, they did this whole thing at BlizzCon where they were like, no, really guys, this has absolutely nothing to do with, this isn't Team Fortress 2, and it's like, no, you're trying way too hard to tell me it's not Team Fortress 2, which tells me that, at least subconsciously, you know it's Team Fortress 2.
Which they did, they did do a little bit of that with Heroes of the Storm, in regards to League of Legends, but it was one of those things where they actually came out and said, look, we didn't even know this had ever become a game. This is a thing that we fucked around with and put up for people to play just for shits and grins at BlizzCon one year. And everyone loved the living shit out of it. So we're like, hey, fuck it, let's make it a game. And it just kind of went on from there. And it's one of those things where, they didn't start out just going out of their way to make it sound like that it was going to not be League of Legends. Whereas they seem to have done that with Overwatch. When you start off with a presentation, hey, this is why our game isn't like the other guy's game, as I said a few moments ago, you're on the wrong foot. You're starting on the wrong foot. With Heroes of the Storm, they're more like, yeah, we know there's going to be comparisons made. Look, we threw this together because there was such a positive response. We think we can do something with this to make this genre more approachable, a more casual approach, and have fun with it. And since we're talking about casual and approachable, let's talk about a key phrase that evidently, Mike, that you were saying was tossed around by Chris Metzen that kind of made you squirm a little bit in your seat.
Yeah, on Overwatch. So, Chris Metzen, as you mentioned during the opening ceremony, before he announced Overwatch, he was teary-eyed.
Yes.
Now, Metzen did not come up with this concept. There were other people within Blizzard who kind of conceived of Overwatch.
So they're to blame.
And then they pitched the idea to Blizzard higher-ups. One of whom is Chris Metzen. Chris Metzen obviously is a high-level executive within Blizzard, but he's not the guy who has final say on what gets made or not. That would be, and I am looking up his name, it's Mike something.
Morhaime.
Yes, Mike Morhaime, president of Blizzard. So, Mike Morhaime is ultimately the guy who decides what gets made and what doesn't. And so, Morheime's being pitched this idea by the people who conceived of Overwatch. Metzen's there. And apparently Metzen just loved this pitch. And after they were done, he says to Morhaime, if you're not going to make this game, I don't want to work here. So even though it's not Metzen's...
A swing and a miss.
If only he had said no, so close yet so far. So, anyway, the point being that even though this isn't Metzen's creation, it's still something he feels strongly about, and he was basically going on about how this is such a bright, cheerful, colorful world, and how he's so excited to be part of it. And he kept using this phrase, which was, touch your inner 6-year-old.
I need an adult.
Exactly. I'm like, phrasing. It's like, but he didn't just do it once, he did it like 2 or 3 times, where he's like, we want to create a game that'll touch your inner 6-year-old. I'm like, oh, stop saying that!
For the love of God, man. I mean, in context, we get what you're trying to say, but the more you say it, the weirder it's sounding. Please, just stop. For the sake of everyone here, including and especially yourself, just stop.
Yeah. Oh, Overwatch. Like, God.
So,
Nothing about this is striking me as, I got to play this right now. I don't know. The most I'm probably gonna have, the most contact I can probably have, if it's free to play, I might download it and play it on a slow day if I'm bored. And that'll be just to, for shits and giggles, just to see what it's like. Other than that, the most exposure I see myself having with Overwatch is when they inevitably work, winks to it into WoW. Such as with Hearthstone, for example. In WoW, at the the Horde and Alliance shrines in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms in Pandaria, they've got NPCs playing Hearthstone games. So I see something like that where we're probably gonna have a Tracer-themed Murloc pet at some point as a BlizzCon exclusive.
Right.
Or, maybe a mount. Like, for example, if you bought that year subscription that one time, you got the Diablo Charger mount for a mount in WoW.
Yeah.
So I see maybe them working something like a mount or a pet or just, something like that into WoW as sort of like where they kind of reference their other games. That's probably the most exposure I'm ever going to get to Overwatch because, I don't know. Honestly, I'd be more inclined to check it out if it had a campaign mode because I'm like, okay, a campaign mode, I'll play it. I'll take the story for a ride. But right now, all they've got is backstory and nothing else. A bunch of characters I'm not interested in.
Right, and if it's going to be one of those things where I'm guessing they will put some story in the game, but at the end of the day, for those of us who might want to just see what the story is to see if it's interesting, it's nothing that we can't get by watching a Twitch stream or better yet, just a YouTube compilation of cutscenes and such. Nothing that we actually have to play the game to see. Mm-hmm. So, a swing and a miss on that front as far as I'm concerned. I think, though, we've probably beaten the Overwatch thing to death. There is one other thing, though.
At BlizzCon, yes.
Yeah, at this time. We'll be beating it up later, for sure, most likely. But
so, Blizzard, another Warcraft thing that did happen.
Yes.
At Blizzard, I just want to touch on this quickly. Cause there really wasn't much to say. They did, have a panel for the Warcraft movie. They showed a trailer there, but they're not releasing it online for stupid reasons.
Fuck you, that's why, pretty much.
I don't know why. I don't know why every trailer for this movie they refuse to show online. Do people not realize what year it is? Like, it's 2014. Seriously, guys. But, even without the trailer, we did get some, shots, of the movie. We saw some character art. We saw Dominic Cooper as King Lane. There was a stylized image of him in his King Lane getup. Who was playing Doomhammer? Who was playing Doomhammer? They had a getup of him, and it was really for the first time that we had seen, the orc effects for this movie. I am trying to pull it up. I should have this out. As to who this was, Okay, yes, here it is. Who is going to be playing Orgrim Doomhammer? Robert Kaczynski, who that name rings a bell. it sounds really familiar, I just can't place who it is.
Ted Kaczynski was a Unabomber.
This is Bob Kaczynski, so. Maybe. Possibly.
He looks vaguely familiar, but he's got one of those generic faces too. It could be just one of those things where we think we know. Anyways, I don't think it's really consequential.
Oh, he was in Pacific Rim.
Okay.
Chuck Hansen. I don't know who that character was.
But the orc effects to me they're since the orcs have pretty much always been done in CGI. Mm-hmm. More or less what you seem to be looking at here is pretty much just a higher quality rendering of the same overall thing. Mm-hmm. It's very true to, the Blizzard take on it and what you've seen in the, in the various cinematics for Blizzard. With the orcs, Orgrim, let's see, who else did they have?
Well, the orc character.
That is the only orc character. Okay.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the only shots of actors in costume or makeup or what have you. Again, Dominic Cooper as King Lane, and then Orgrim Doomhammer, Robert Kaczynski. But like you said, the orcs in Warcraft are the orcs in Warcraft. The thing that bothers me, and maybe this is just a lore thing, maybe this is an oversight, but it really bugged me, is that Orgrim Doomhammer, of course, wields the weapon known as the Doomhammer during the First War when this movie takes place, but it's got the Frostwolf emblem on it. And the thing about the Doomhammer was that it was wielded by Orgrim Doomhammer, obviously, but Orgrim Doomhammer belongs to the Blackrock clan of orcs, and the Doomhammer didn't get the Frostwolf emblem until Doomhammer passed it on to Thrall on his deathbed, and Thrall engraved the emblem of his own clan, the Frostwolf clan, onto it. So why this has the Frostwolf clan on it, I don't know, I'm just worried that they're gonna find a way to work Thrall into a movie where Thrall shouldn't be appearing, seeing as he's like either not born or a baby at this point in the timeline.
Possibly. Maybe I could see them doing some kind of time progression or something towards the end where a dying Orgrim hands it over to Thrall. I don't know. This is another one of those things where I probably should be a lot more excited about it than I am. This is another case, and this one is a bit further in the future. This is 2016 that we're talking about with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been in the talks for so many years. Originally, Sam Raimi was going to do it, and
he wasn't going to include Arthas or Varian Wrynn in his Warcraft movie.
Right. And basically, he wouldn't play ball with Blizzard. Blizzard insisted on maintaining, intense creative control over this, as they should.
Blizzard made outrageous demands, like insisting that Warcraft characters be in the Warcraft movie.
Yeah, okay, guys, you're going to make a movie with our franchise. We would like for our characters to be in it. No, you shut up. Okay, so we have a problem then. Okay. And props to Blizzard for sticking to their creative guns on that, because the Sam Raimi vision, as I understood it, would have been just an utter dumpster fire. It
would have been that Dungeons and Dragons movie that they made that sucked, where people who play Dungeons and Dragons are like, the fuck is this shit? You just slap Dungeons and Dragons title on top of a generic kind of poorly made fantasy movie.
Yeah, but you know what? Nothing can beat In the Name of the King. And I actually do really like that movie.
Burt Reynolds.
In spite of and because of the fact that Burt Reynolds plays the king. Everyone else around him has an English accent except Burt Reynolds. And he's like, I'm Burt Reynolds. I'm your king. You can call me King Bandit if you want. Basically, it was a Sean Connery and Hunt for Red October kind of a thing. I'm Burt Reynolds. I don't give fucks. Here I am. It was good stuff. But yeah, so the Sam Raimi vision of this would have been just god awful. The only thing he's ever done right, as far as I'm concerned, is Army of Darkness and Evil Dead. And I credit that largely to Bruce Campbell. So,
but to kind of get back on track, from what I see, one of the things I really like about it is if you look at this King Lane picture, Dominic Cooper as King Lane, who is of course the father of Varian Wrynn. And I think a ball was dropped because, of course, King Lane has to die at the end of the First War. This would have been a great role for Sean Bean.
Now, if you look at the armor that King Lane's wearing there, it looks a lot like the armor. I think it's probably going to end up being Varian's armor in a sequel.
Well, I mean, when you look at it,
I know there's a few distinctive differences here between what this is and what Varian wears in game, but
the big thing that the big thing that really sells it is the lion head on the shoulder.
Yeah, and that really is. I will say this for the prop designers and the costume designers, this looks like a set that you would have in game, realized in a believable way.
Exactly. The big thing about WoW's armor is that it's all very stylized, and sometimes the shoulders get a bit ridiculous, and sometimes the proportions are a bit off. But basically they said, well, let's take that general Warcraft look and say, well, what would this piece of armor look like if it was real? And they did that, and it looks great. Right.
And it's good stuff.
I'm really digging that Alliance sword. The lion head on the hilt.
Yeah, that is sexy. And
but
Is there any? Now you would know better than I. Is there one like that in game?
Not that I know of. The closest I can think of is the single-handed sword that you can get for PvP. That like the legacy PvP sets.
Oh, piss on that.
The single-handed. Well, yeah, because you can't transmog them because of stupid reasons. But if you get the single-handed sword, it sort of has that shape of the blade, but it's missing the lion head on the hilt.
Gotcha.
But in terms of just the movie, the big thing that we can get here, aside from costume designs, is the cast. Of course, seeing as the trailer wasn't released. So let's quickly go over the cast. I know a lot of these people you're not aware of, but just for the sake of discussion, of course, Dominic Cooper, King Lane, Rob Kaczynski as Orgrim Doomhammer. Now, interesting note for Pacific Rim, the guy playing Orgrim Doomhammer was the guy who played the Australian Jaeger pilot in Pacific Rim.
Okay.
So that's who he is. We've got Travis Fimmel is playing Lothar, Anduin Lothar, who is King Lane's right-hand man and who is going to be leading the Alliance in glorious vengeance against the Horde in the Second War. Travis Fimmel is mostly known playing the lead role in the History Channel show Vikings.
Okay.
We've got Toby Kebbell as Doratan, and here's what's interesting. I've already kind of gone over this, but just for the sake of getting all this in context of the movie, this movie takes place during the First War. In the First War, which we see in the game Warcraft 1, Orcs vs. Humans. In that, you've got the two leaders, King Lane and Blackhand, and War Chief Blackhand of the Horde. The player character in that game, if you play for the humans, you're playing as Lothar. If you're playing as the Orcs, you're playing as Doomhammer. But then they throw Duratan into all of this, who's Thrall's father. And I don't know where Duratan's gonna fit into this narrative, because as far as I can see, you've got the nice parallels, King Lane, Blackhand. Lothar, Doomhammer. But then Duratan's just kind of there, and is he just there because he's Thrall's dad?
Well, I think you know the answer to this.
I'm just saying, Duratan did fuck all in the First War.
Well, the thing is, they're banking on the knowledge that a lot of the current players don't know and don't care about that. Mm-hmm. People are going to go see this because it's a Warcraft movie, and why not? Especially if they release it on a Tuesday and are smart. But a lot of WoW players are, Blizzard has said they think probably 70 to 80% of the player base really doesn't pay attention to the lore at all. And I find that to be a startlingly high number. I would have said maybe 50 or 60%, but not as high as, 80, 90. But the point here being, whichever numbers you go with, the majority of players don't know and don't really care. But those same people will still go see this movie because it doesn't involve them reading anything, like books or quest text. And I'm not saying that to insult anybody. I'm saying that because a lot of times
You people should read quest texts.
Well, I can get it from the standpoint of when you're in game and you just want to level. There's always that, at least with me, there was always that mad rush to get to level cap, and I've always just blitzkrieged through, and a lot of times I haven't read quest text unless I found it to be a quest chain that particularly interested me for whatever reason, i.e. the Wrathgate quest. That quest chain was very interesting. And, some of the ones in Pandaria were kind of interesting, though I sadly couldn't tell you which ones now. I know not the ones on Thunder Isle. I'll tell you that right the fuck now. Let me tell you something about that. Anyway, sorry.
Do you read the quest text for Raytheon's?
Yeah, I've read most of the Raytheon quest text, so you don't have to read as much with him because he talks a lot. He talks ad nauseum. And that's the thing that he does, and I'm okay with it. But the point being that people will see this because it doesn't involve them reading anything, and because of this, because the ignorance of the player base, they can take. There's going to be liberties taken with this movie. It's best to approach this just like we approach everything else, where we have something that's converted into a cinematic format. Take it as its own standalone thing. Don't really expect anything, and then that way you won't be disappointed. Worst case, in that scenario, you walk away saying, well, it was about what I expected, but the action was good and the orcs died real cool. Best case scenario, you can walk away from and say, hey, that was actually somewhat faithful to, the actual lore of Warcraft, and they did a pretty good job with what they did with it. So, I find just approaching things with that is good for one's blood pressure, and it tends to prevent calling people Hitler on the internet, which, I still do that for fun because it's fun. But at the same time, it avoids the need to do so out of rage, and I can do it in the spirit of lulz, in which it's intended by the way you're Hitler, and just kind of go on with that. So I'm not expecting anything out of this, and that way if I don't get anything, I won't be disappointed.
Well, let's truck through this cast list. Ben Foster is Medivh. Daniel Wu is Gul'dan. Ruth Negga is Lady Taria. Robert Kaczynski is Orgrim Doomhammer. Dom Cooper, King Lane. The thing that really made this for me, Clancy Brown, voice of Lex Luthor from the Superman animated series, as Blackhand the Destroyer, first War Chief of the Horde, and my favorite orc character.
Yeah, and when you first told me the name, I'm like, who? And then I went on MMO Champion, and I was looking at the picture, I'm like, oh yeah, Sergeant Zim. From Starship Troopers.
Yes.
So, there's that. Really he's the only name of those that I recognized.
I recognize Dominic Cooper. That stands out to me. Again, I'm kind of blanking on anything that he's done, but he looks familiar and his name's familiar. Quick search, let's see. Dominic Cooper. 'Cause it's really standing out. Okay. And so...
Yes.
He played, Tony Stark's dad in Captain America 1.
Oh. Okay.
Howard Stark.
Whatever.
And he was also in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Okay.
So, a real pedigree there when it comes to, his filmography. But then we've also got Ben Schnetzer as Khadgar and Paula Patton as Garona Half-Orcan. So that's your cast. I'm excited about it.
It's a thing.
I like the set designs. The casting seems fine to me. The art direction seems good. I just really wish they let us see a fucking trailer. But yeah. With that sort of wraps up BlizzCon. Not much in terms of Warcraft from a game side. They did have a panel where they kind of talked about some of the class changes, but that sort of gets into the minutia of things that we like to stay away from on this show. Let's delve into the one final topic. This has been a thing since, the summer.
Yeah, been a couple of months now, and
I want to say August.
Yeah, it's just not going away, and it's irritating me. And some of you out there who have any foot in the gamer community have probably heard of Gamergate. Basically, what it is, an indie game developer by the name of Zoe Quinn had a relationship with a staff writer at a gaming news and review website called Kotaku. Now, the allegations with this are that
I also just want to point out, before you go any further, that not only did Zoe Quinn have a relationship with a staff writer at Otaku, but in doing so, she actually cheated on her boyfriend, who she was in a relationship at the time.
Awkward. Wow. So we know who the unsung hero of this entire thing is right now. That poor bastard. Mm-hmm. If by some way this show makes it to you, sir, my hat's off to you. Bros before hoes. So, that being said, the allegations here being that, calling into question the ethics of the gaming journalistic community, let me say, for starters, hold the fucking phone. In this day and age, where an 8 is considered a bad score for a game, because if it gets anything lower than that, the site or the magazine will lose sponsorships. In this day and age where fanboys rampantly masturbate to iterative versions of the same fucking game that they had last year, you dare to even insinuate that such a fucking thing as ethics in journalism even exists anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Get your fucking head out of your ass. I mean, okay, on YouTube there are a few who stand out as having maintained ethics. Total Biscuit being one of them, but even his stance has come, him and Angry Joe, I would say, are the two of the more well-known ones that I follow who, have standards and ethics and such things. But it's come to them even at a great cost. I mean, Total Biscuit's almost had his YouTube account yanked, for copyright infringements, because basically what'll happen is he'll do a piece on a game and he'll trash it and say it sucks, and then when he posts the footage of the game, they get him for copyright.
Now, so I'm going to go in the defense of the Gamergate movement, actually.
Okay.
Everything you're saying is true. That doesn't mean that we can't expect things to be better.
But it's not. I mean, it's not going... The only thing... Okay. The thing is, there's only one way that it's going to get better, and that's not by bitching about it.
Except that... yes. Okay, go on.
No, go on. Go on.
I was going to say, but it's kind of gone beyond bitching about it. Just for example, a lot of these websites that have been implicated in this whole kind of grassroots investigation that the Gamergate movement has sprouted forth. A lot of these sites that have been uncovered as having questionable journalistic practices, having situations where game journalists are in personal or professional relationships with game designers, and how that's influenced their reporting of the industry. These sites that have been uncovered and exposed as engaging in this sort of corruption have actually lost sponsors. Gawker has lost sponsors by the truckload, for example. Other websites are to the point now, have lost sponsors to the point where they are putting up PayPal donations because if they don't, they're not going to exist. So, you're right. It's not going to change if you just bitch about it, but it seems as if the Gamergate movement has gotten to the point where they're trying to actively improve things.
Well, I understand that, and I want to go on the record as I don't have any sympathy or love or defense of Zoe Quinn. I really don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about her. I don't hate her. I don't love her. I don't give a flying fuck about her. She's some chick. Whatever, she cheated on her boyfriend, kind of a poor form thing to do, kind of frowned upon. I don't give a flying fuck about her, one way or the other. I know this thing has, evidently, the vocal idiocy of the gamer community has taken kind of a misogynistic approach to some of this, which has riled up the feminists on the other end. And there's this other whole subtext of this thing, which I think is just absolute buttfuckery. I don't. Why do we have to have this shit in our fucking gaming discussions? And then this is an offshoot of this. You've had this whole rant and this.
I'd argue.
Yes.
I would argue that it was the hardcore feminists who injected this discussion into the gaming lexicon. I mean, people like Arnita Sarkeesian, whose entire careers have been based off of the fact that have been based off of her posing as someone who's into video games and concerned about quote unquote misogyny. And she's been exposed as someone who never had a passion for video games. She basically used it as a means to push an agenda.
Right, and I'm familiar. I know what her real game is. Yeah, and I get it. The thing is, okay, people like that on the fringe of both ends of this thing. I don't think anyone with half a brain doesn't take Sarkeesian seriously. It's the same. Okay, this could very much be likened to the American political climate with the Tea Party on the far right and the more progressive socialists on the left in the Democratic Party. The extremes on either end, I don't think anyone takes these fools seriously. I think anyone with an adult mind, a well-formed perspective of reality itself, realizes that extremes don't accomplish anything. And I really don't care who injected this extra layer of fuckwittery into this thing. It doesn't have a place here. And, and I've seen these arguments popping up all over the internet about this feminism versus misogyny versus misandry argument, and the thing being that women are overly sexualized, which in a lot of cases they are. And frankly, I'm a male with a libido and a penis, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me. And on the flip side, they say, a lot of the guys are saying, well, men are have unrealistic stereotypes set for them as well because they're all ripped and buffed and they can do all these amazing things. And then someone counters, well, yeah, but they have goals and they're driving the story. And my thought when I read that is, yeah, but it's unfair to us guys who don't want to have goals. Why should I have to have a goal? I don't want them. So what about us? These expectations of doing things. Just because I'm a man, I have to do shit? Fuck you. I don't know.
To me,
I think it's silly.
To me, the Gamergate thing, comes down to one thing. And it's like ethics in journalism.
Oxymoron.
Yes, but my point is that doesn't mean we can't expect better. And if you don't expect better, it's never going to get better. And the fact of the matter is, was there a conflict of interest with with how Otaku handled Zoe Quinn? Yes. Has the outrage surrounding that prompted people to dig further and find out that there are deeper levels of corruption within the gaming journalist community? Yes. Now, whatever your thoughts are on the role of feminism in gaming, whether or not you think gamers or video games are inherently misogynistic, whatever your thoughts are on those topics, at the end of the day, you should be able to agree that game journalism should be free of corruption. Whether or not you think it's possible, you should at least think that, yes, that is the desired state of affairs.
Well, I do agree with that. Here's my thing. This is the underlying point that I'm trying to get to. Ladies and gentlemen, and I do mean ladies and gentlemen, hoes and rakes out there of the gaming community don't rely on journalists to give you the straight story on anything, gaming or otherwise. We've had this luxury as gamers with our news over the years, with the advent of things like YouTube and the explosion of the internet as a whole. We've had this luxury of kind of being in this little bit of a bubble where there would be these independent sites and these kind of underground channels on YouTube that would give you the straight dope for a while. And we had that for several years, and I think it spoiled us and kind of insulated us in this bubble. And now, quote unquote fantasy has come to resemble reality. And that reality is that in, mainstream journalism, I don't want to say actual journalism, in mainstream journalism, current affairs news, things like that, I don't, when I watch any news outlet, I expect bias. I expect pandering. I expect pretty much everything and anything shady under the sun to have tainted that news source. And you know what I do because of that? I get my information from multiple sources, and I use my brain to boil it down to say, okay, well, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And guess what, folks? As gamers, we have reached that point. We should have been doing it all along to begin with, but we're at that point now where we have to think for ourselves, whether you're a man, a woman, a feminist, a men's rights activist, whatever the fuck you identify with and call yourself. I think this is insane. I think it's silly. I do agree with you, Mike, in that there should be a ethical journalism should exist. I also think a cure for cancer should exist. I think a lot of things should exist that don't and probably won't ever. And, at one point, yes, it did kind of exist within the gaming community, only because it hadn't become business. But now it has become business in a huge, massive way that even 5 years ago, few people would have seen happen, and yet here the fuck we are, and we're going through the same moral arguments and dilemmas that have faced the world at large for decades, and it hasn't left the outer world, and it's not going to leave our world. It's time we use critical thinking when we decide what we want to buy and what we want to pass on. It's time we begin getting our information from multiple sources. And in doing so, as you're exploring these multiple sources, hey, guess what? You may find a couple here and there that you really like who aren't sponsored and aren't in anyone's pocket, and they don't have their dick in anyone's pussy, or on the female end, they're not in any appropriate relationships. You may find some kind of ethical bastion out there, and I'm sure they do exist here and there. But you know what? If you sit there and you bitch that your mainstream gaming news sources are tainted, well, that means it's time to abandon them. If you feel that strongly about it, that's your change. Getting on the internet and calling someone a slut or a whore or a misogynistic pig isn't going to solve fuck all or anything. Get your head out of your goddamned ass and think for your fucking self instead of throwing straw man arguments around. Fucking think for yourselves, people. And if you don't, then you know what? You don't deserve ethics. You don't deserve accurate, honest journalism, because you're just a mindless idiot who is walking around wanting someone to tell you what the fuck to do, and all of a sudden you think your precious little 10 gods aren't giving you the straight dope. Oh my god, it's unthinkable. No, shut up. You're not entitled to any of this. The only thing that you have is your own brain, and if you're too fucking lazy to use it, then I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for you. That's my take on it. Sorry to go on this hate-filled rant, but I see all of this whining on both ends, and which one I personally agree with is irrelevant. It's become a weapon of mass distraction.
Mm-hmm.
There's all this infighting and bickering, and at the end of the day, no matter how many people you call Hitler, it's not going to solve anything. So can we just all agree that all women are man-hating harpies and all men are misogynistic pigs, and get on with shit? Jesus.
Passionately argued. Well, that's our foray into Gamergate. We've kind of avoided it. I was kind of hesitant to bring it up, if only because this has been something that has been argued and has been covered on so many other shows, so many other video series, so many other avenues on the internet who have done much more legwork into it than either of us have. So I was kind of thinking of the mindset that if people want to know about Gamergate, there are places for them to go that aren't necessarily us, but it was something that we had to discuss. And
it was. Well, I had actually mentioned it to Mike, and it's evidently also been requested by some of our listeners, and so you want our take on it. There it is. As far as the legwork goes, honestly, I think it's something that goes beyond work. I think it's one of those things that really it really boils down to, it is cut and dried of just use your common sense, filter your own facts, and make your own decisions.
Well, I am going to plug a resource if anyone wants to know more about Gamergate, if anyone wants to know more about the issues, and I'll be upfront about it. The person I'm going to direct you to is biased. He does have an opinion on it. It reflects my opinion, which I've shared in this episode. So if you disagree with me, then maybe this is not the person you want to be checking out. But if that's not an issue and you want a good summation of the facts, I'd check out Internet Aristocrat's Quinspiracy video series, where he kind of goes over all the Gamergate. And he kind of does it on a week-by-week basis, so you really kind of see how the story's evolved and taken shape over its lifetime. So if you are interested in learning more about Gamergate, that's a good place to at least start at. But I think that pretty much does it for episode 40. Jack?
Yeah.
Are you there? Oh, yeah, that's it. Anyway, yeah, this pretty much does it for episode 40. You can catch us on Twitter at Geek Show. I'm trying to be more active on that. Email us at geekshow@gmail.com. Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, iTunes, all that good stuff. For Jack, this is Mike, signing off.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen.